back to This Week in Indies. It's easy to assume that everything an artist creates has a little bit of who they are in there. But more often than not, pure fiction is just that. Even more so, writing on a subject that may be the opposite of a person's views, values, and social and economic status may be needed for the type of story they're intending to tell. So we will examine the many ways in which we are not always what we write. Then Steel Cannon will be along with indie books you might enjoy if you're a fan of Lore of the Wilds by Anneli Sabrana. Then lastly, we epilogue with some fun trivia about the art of the slam dance. So jump into the pit for This Week in Indies with your host, Joe Compton. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, however you are. I hope you're doing well, and welcome to This Week in Indies. I am your host, Joe Compton, and I am live from Los Angeles, where I'm in my hotel room right now, and attending the Slamdance Film Festival, which has been wonderful and awesome, and I'm real excited to show you all what I've been doing here very soon. And talk a little bit about it down the road. But today we're here doing another This Week in Indies, and I'm going to say right off the bat, I apologize. I'm on hotel Wi-Fi, and actually I'm on my phone Wi-Fi, so it's even better. But so if I crap out or get wonky, that's just the way it goes today, and I apologize. But for everybody else, you didn't come here to hear me talk anyway. You came to hear all these wonderful people talk because they're awesome, and I'm real excited to have each and every one of them here with me. Let's go down the line and introduce ourselves to start off the show. Mr. Trammell, why don't you start us off, please?
Me. Hi, I'm Wayne Trammell. I write a bunch of stuff, primarily historical fiction and then urban fantasy. And I live in Las Vegas, and just a pleasure to be here. Put me in, Coach.
Nice. All right, Mr. Brian Tan.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Brian Tan, finally getting back into the swing of things, all writing. I am a fiction author, urban fantasy, sci-fi, erotic thriller, you name it. Let's do this. It's always a good day to not be an asshole.
All right. Sarah?
Very true, yeah. I'm SG Tosh. You can call me Sarah. I write urban fantasy and paranormal suspense, and I am also in Las Vegas.
All right, and Mr. Myers.
Hi, I'm Dennis Myers. I'm the author of a science fiction series called Rise of the Automated Empire. I also design T-shirts on the side, which you can find all the links at automatedempire.com.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. This is an interesting topic, as it's been noted in the chat. By the way, here's Anita and Ayal's here. And yes, Anita says interesting topic. And Oz and Mrs. Alicia is always here. And the Books by Tiffany is here. Dennis breaking the fourth wall. So hello, everybody. It's so nice to have a great group of you joining us. It's a very interesting topic because, I think it's more of a topic for readers than it is for us writers, because us writers know, right, that not everything that comes from our imagination is rooted in truth or in ourselves in a lot of respects. But I am curious, how often this is a subject matter that's come up for you and how much you do tend to kind of lean on the imagination versus the actual, depth of yourself in what you do and how you do it. Whoever wants to start, I don't care.
I realized
I'm sitting here laughing because my first novel includes a serial killer's point of view. So, no, not everything in my book is based on me. Although I must admit, writing from his point of view was more fun than it should have been.
Oh, crap.
You can't defend. You can't defend a serial killer's point of view. You can understand it. and you can create your own list of victims. But that doesn't mean that you necessarily condone it. Just
Well, sir, considering my fifth novel is what's weird, I've noticed is that all of my male protagonists share similarities with me in some ways, except for John Baker. And Ed and Livy's about a guy who kind of goes on a murder spree, and then I have a work in progress that involves a guy going on a murder spree. So I kind of wonder what that says about me. Luckily, I've got alibis for my whereabouts over the last year or so. So yeah.
How about for you, Sarah? Oh, sorry.
Go
Wait.
ahead, Sarah.
No, you can go because you were.
I'm really tempted to just start putting a disclaimer in the front of my books saying the opinions of the characters are not necessarily those of the management.
That's a good idea.
I
think I might have to do that.
I'm a grumpy old cishet white guy. I are what I are, you know. I like to think that I am not totally typical of grumpy old cishet white guys, but there's going to be some of that. Also, the other thing is the current novel I'm working on is the first thing I've done that isn't first person. And I think when you write in first person, I think Sarah can relate to this. When you write in first person, they're going to say that sounds a lot more like you. Especially, I have people all the time say when they read my stuff, they can hear my voice in their head. Which, by the way, is the greatest compliment and the most horrifying critique of my work.
Yeah.
I still tell people all the time, get out of my head. It's a scary place in here.
Yeah, I can totally relate to what Wayne was saying. My current series, and even the series before that, the main characters were women. Deadmall has a 16-year-old girl, but she's very much based on like who I was, even though third person. But Misadventure, definitely, I feel my voice coming through her a lot more clearly. And for me, I think to a degree that frees me up to, like, if I have a character that I know kind of takes care of my voice, because my voice is always going to be in it somewhere, because I'm making all this up and it is me. If I can kind of funnel all of that to one character, it frees me up to do different things with the other characters, the supporting characters, and in the case of Deadmall, like some of the other main characters. And I find that helps me get into like having a place where I can put my own thoughts in my own character and kind of leave them, helps me move into writing other people a little bit more easily.
Nice. Yeah. AF Stewart says there's a reason why I have the quote, "I'm not a serial killer" on my website. And
That's what
AL Mango,
Which is exactly what a serial killer would say.
That's what I'm saying.
It's true.
And AL Mango says on my copyright page there's a statement that says all story elements are fiction and should be the characters and any similarities to any living person or dead is purely coincidental. So
Isn't that on the Return of the Living Dead also? Which is even better.
the movies always have this disclaimer because there's a lot of times when they have like dead animals and stuff in there, and they always have the disclaimer that no animals were hurt on this set or anything like that. It's part of the process for them actually to get a rating. But yeah, it's interesting. I am curious though, for stepping outside of yourself and writing in your pure imaginational state. Do you just allow whatever's going to come and then trim it to whatever might be, palatable, or I mean, we do that with any type of writing, right? We write and we edit. But what I'm saying is more of, do you find that there's a more attention to what you've written through your imagination versus what you know to be true, or what is part of you? Do you find you're spending more time on that aspect of the edit than you would normally because you have those feelings, so you understand what you know? Do you know what I mean? Am I making
Um,
sense?
yeah, actually, in the current book I'm writing, it's a dual POV, and one of the POVs is the male lead, first person. And that was like, in order to even get into his head, I had to just do a stream of consciousness from the last moment I saw him in the previous book.
Mm.
And it took several sessions and like months for me to get a handle on his voice, like to get myself to think in his kind of cadence and with his opinions. So I would say, yeah, imagination, like pulling from my imagination and doing something that is trying to get as far away from me as possible definitely takes more time for me.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I had to scale back actually a lot of my imagination when I was writing Ed and Livy, because there was actually certain points I even was like, all right, this is going a little too far. Like, this is too much. So I actually had to practice the art of being subtle and alluding to the thing that I did instead of just, because anyone who's known me for any period of time, I'm an open book to a fault. I say what I'm thinking, even when I know in my normal human brain I shouldn't share, but I share anyway. So I really had to scale back because A, I didn't want to freak people out. And B, I wanted to, it kind of scared me that that's where my mind was going. So, but I mean, but even in like the Bryce Creed books, um, a lot of that stuff is who Brian used to be. And, I was writing those books like 20 years ago. So, a lot of that was who I used to be. And it was even more of like a level of confidence in my personality that I didn't possess at the time.
Mhm.
So it was definitely the imagination of who I wanted to be, but
Yeah.
still having
You
some of
know,
my own voice in it.
I because everything I've written up until now has been first person, I've always treated it more like an improv acting exercise.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
when you do improv, it's yes and it's don't judge, just go with it. And the other problem with history, particularly if you're an old grumpy cishet white guy, is that there's a lot of things that people believed and said and just didn't think about that current Wayne might be not really thrilled with or not want to be associated with. The kind of casual racism of the
Mm.
early 20th century,
Mhm.
where people just said and assumed things. Um, and I find when I'm doing that first person kind of character stuff, that stuff, to your point, Joe, it kind of spills out. And then I go back and I actually have to be careful not to rewind too much because then it's not truthful. Then it's
Mm.
not true to the period.
For
I
me, I tend to start with getting to know my characters because every character is going to have a different worldview. My books are ensemble novels, third person, close, and I have multiple points of view that are different and competing, not necessarily wrong. And what I try to do is, I have my own point of view, but I try to come in on the further sides of the spectrum and come at it in the middle. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Also, my characters tend to talk to each other a lot, so I'm just there taking notes.
I don't think I've had
Sarah,
a
you want to
character
say
talk
something?
to me in a while.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's an interesting point that Wayne brought up, where like your character lives in a time, or they make, like, for me, I'm a discovery writer, so I refer to it as my characters making decisions that I don't agree with but make sense for them. That can be hard, where it's like, I don't really like this, but it makes sense in the moment, but I'm gonna have to, like, as the author, I'm obviously gonna be the one that takes heat for it. So that can be a challenge, to be like that reining back of like, should I get rid of this because I'm uncomfortable with it as the author, or do I leave it because it is true to the character?
Yeah, it's interesting. A.L. Mango has some thoughts as well, and it says, "I used personal experience as needed throughout the story. The opening scene of The Mortician was a memory of mine, and I based the protagonist at the age of myself. But as the story progressed, then personal experience goes away and fictional writing takes over." And then he also says, "There's also parts of the story for Brian that considered too far. The editors generally will discuss the element with me, and it's decided collectively whether the element remains in the story." Brian, I'm curious for your perspective too, because the book that everybody sees here, Invisible Heart, is actually based off of something that already exists, by Kendra Souter, and you were writing in her world. Was that a different imaginational experience for you, or did you feel like the responsibility of carrying another person's series there made you a little bit more conscious of what you were writing?
Oh yeah. I ran every chapter by Kendra. I would talk to her so much. All right, well, when it came to the characters, like their own stuff, like certain things like inner thoughts or whatever, it wasn't necessary. But just for things that this group that was connected to the main antagonist of her series, who in turn is the overarching antagonist of both book series. Hey, do you think this works? Do you think this would be okay? So we collaborated a whole lot. Like, I would write it and then I'd give it to her. She would read over it and give me the stamp of approval, and then I'd keep going. Once I got to Unbreakable Mind, the sequel, it was much the same, but I didn't do it as closely. I'd do about 2 or 3 chapters and then send them to her, because at this point I was ingrained in the world. But then when we got to the final quarter of the book, we were very, very succinct and tight with each other, because the end portion of my book and the end portion of the final book of her series happened parallel. So it's literally, when you read, the seventh book of the Permutation Archives, it's all from Mila Hunter's perspective, where John Baker is a secondary protagonist. And then when you look at Unbreakable Mind, Mila Hunter is the secondary protagonist. So it's all from their perspectives. So it was a challenge, but I think it was a fun challenge. And I kind of feel like I was a bit of a novice writer. So it's not like I had to put ego aside or put these tried and true, these proven methods aside to work with someone else, because all of us, we have our own theories and thoughts and ideas of how we do things, which, some people are able to collaborate a little bit easier than others. Some people can't collaborate because there are people that have the mindset, my way is my way, because it works for me.
Right.
So it was since I was relatively new, and I was sort of defaulting to her as the experienced author in our collaboration.
I think it's interesting about other people, what Ail's point, whether you have an editor, like somebody at a publishing house who's writing herd on it or not, you need other people. Sarah and I are members of the same writers group here in Las Vegas, and I'll bring stuff in just less to see if it's any good because my ego tells me it is, but how it's being received by the reader, right? And so I'll bring in something and somebody will say, particularly with historical stuff, well, you can't say that anymore, or, this is, pick a terrible thing, fat shaming, racist, pick one. And, I listen to that feedback because sometimes they're right, but other times I look at Sarah and she looks at me and goes, and we're good. and I do the same for her, because we're trying to walk that line. And I don't want to say anything egregious. I don't want to offend people unintentionally. If I offend somebody, I mean to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped worrying. I stopped worrying about it, to be honest. Like, I think the only time that I felt bad when I wrote something was a very good friend of mine read one of the John Baker books, and John Baker refers to someone as the R word. Now, when I was writing the book, we weren't at. I mean, I was writing the book in the mid 2000s. We weren't at that point where that wasn't okay to say. And then with the character Bryce, Bryce is, Joe, he's brash, he's lewd, he's crude, he's tactless, callous, and condescending. He says things to get a reaction, not because that's what he really thinks. He says things to get a reaction to gauge. So, but when the person told me I didn't really like that, I understand that it's the character and that's who the character, but that made him a little bit unlikable. And honestly, at first I felt sad. But then I was like, she just really paid me a good compliment, because I've now fleshed this character out that he's not a one-note hero. He's an anti-hero. You're not supposed, and I credit a YouTube content creator, the Birdman, who does the Everything Wrong, among other things, the Everything Wrong with CinemaSins series, where he said, one of his main criticisms of CinemaSins is that you keep talking like the hero of the story is someone that you have to root for every single solitary thing you do. They do. No, you don't. If a well-written lead character is someone that you can understand their motivations, that doesn't mean you have to like them. Or a well-written villain, you can understand their motivations, that doesn't mean you like them. Tony Stark and Eric Killmonger Stevens, prime examples. Tony Stark is an arrogant, narcissistic dick who turns into granted, he's dealing with the PTSD, but he is still he's the same guy, just with different motivations. And Killmonger, well, come on. But you still root for them in their own ways. You still celebrate Tony's sacrifice, and you still celebrate T'Challa conquering Killmonger.
Yeah, I could think of one character. To think of one lead character that I'm not pretty big fond of.
Who's that, Joe?
Sarah's character at Misadventure is a really good idea. She's a really good example of a flawed character, to Brian's point, who does the best she can, and occasionally you want to grab her and give her a good shaking because she needs that.
Yes.
Well, just make sure she's
not
not
that I actually would. I would not actually lay hands, but metaphorically, she occasionally.
Yeah, this ain't the 40s anymore, where you give the woman a good slap to get her back to her senses. There, Wayne.
Grapefruit in the face will get you a lot of trouble now.
Touche. Oh man. I think
how is it writing her, Sarah? Is that how you feel writing her? Do you have to stop sometimes? And
yeah, she can be the worst sometimes, for sure.
I was gonna say, Brian, to answer your question, Frodo Baggins for me is the protagonist I least like the most. So,
oh man,
if it wasn't for Samwise Gamgee, that story would fall apart.
Very true. Samwise is the true hero.
And
Straight up hero.
I don't want to get into it because then the Lord of the Rings folks are going to just attack me. So,
Well, you know what? They can come at you if you want. I'm wearing the hat. I'll throw hands for you, buddy.
And this is what we're doing for the rest of the episode now.
Well, I mean, everyone's entitled to their wrong opinion, really. I mean, you know.
In the stories that I wrote, one of the central things that goes through the 4 books are the mistakes that the well-meaning people have made.
Nice.
You know, they do something out of the goodness of their hearts. They think this is going to be better, and it may not be the right choice by the end of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I was just watching. If have any of you watched Tales of the Walking Dead, the anthology, the short? It's like the anthology series set in the Walking Dead universe. 6 episodes. There was one episode that had Jesse Usher. It was sort of like a film noir mystery, and the long and the short of it was he looked like he had murdered a prominent townsperson and some children, and the people of the town were about to execute him, and he's trying to like get them to hear his side of the story. They didn't want to hear it. Now, when you look at it from their perspective, here's a stranger that they took in and they nursed back to health. He kills someone. They don't want to hear that it's an accident. It's easy to blame the stranger, where come to find out he was innocent. Their motivations were right from their perspective, but they would not see past their grief to get the full story. And he even said, what would have happened if you would have killed me and then you find out the truth? You know what I mean? So I think, you know, Dennis's point, you know, is absolutely right. You know, you get it's I think that when you have these flawed characters, it doesn't make it makes them better. We don't need, as much as we all love Steve Rogers, he will get to be a boring character after a while, because I mean, even when he does make a mistake, it's an oh gosh golly gee.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of gets forgiven for it. And the only person that wasn't willing to forgive him was the narcissistic playboy philanthropist, billionaire, which made him to seem like a dick.
Who was also making his own
It's
mistakes.
interesting when
Exactly.
you're writing characters. It's interesting when you're writing characters because, and I learned this after 30 years in the belly of the corporate American beast, which is every decision, no matter how stupid, made perfect sense to the person who made it at the time.
Yep. Absolutely.
And as the author, right, you've got to realize it's going to make a lot more sense if you wear that, forgive the obvious metaphor, if you wear that hat, that they're not being awful to move the plot along. They're being awful because they think they're solving a different problem.
Yeah. I mean, going, you know, using the comic book analogy again, look at Frank Castle. He does awful things and he doesn't care. You know, that's his idea. That's his brand of justice. But you look at a character like, say, Batman, that has this, that in the primary has this code of not killing, but then there are aspects of him where he don't really have that kind of hang up. Looking at Ben Affleck's version for a moment, you know what I mean? It's a lot different.
Dexter Morgan's a good example of that too. Dexter Morgan has
exactly
starts with a code and kind of veers off course very often and has to kind of bring himself back in if he wants to be in the moral aspect of his life, right? So
right. And it's like when you use morality as a reason why, there's less forgiveness when you stray. Where if you're someone like Frank Castle or Jason Todd, you're just doing it. That's it. And you're forgiven no matter which line you cross, because it's almost like you've got the grace that you're going to do what you need to do to get the job done.
Yeah, and you know, going to add to your points, Brian, about thinking there's a big difference between the use of potentially offensive terms within the dialogue of a character, the story paints as bad versus within the narrative.
Yeah.
If these things were to
Right.
appear in the narrative, it would be made clear that the character's thoughts, these are the character's thoughts rather than the narration itself.
Yeah, because it's just like, where, if Wayne's talking about in some of his stories the casual racism, from what I know of Wayne, he writes it that it's coming from the character. That's not what Wayne's thinking. That's what the character's thinking.
Yeah.
And even certain like in some films of the past, I think that's why even today we can watch Blazing Saddles and laugh our asses off at the casual racism. But if you watch, say, American History X, it's extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because the opposite goes in effect for when a person shows who the true personality is, and they've created fictional characters that have morality and don't have those views, and it's kind of then you kind of get stuck in between, and then you can't blame an audience for thinking what they think because you know if you see the real person and doing the terrible things that they're doing, how is an audience supposed to differentiate, right? We know different, but it's so I'm defending the audience a little bit, but I think to a certain extent though I think that also proves the point that even if the person's a horrible person and they're writing nice good characters, they're also using their imagination because they're not good nice people. So it's kind of the same concept, just opposite, black and white.
Opposite side of the fence.
I think it's also important to remember that even if a person is horrible, they're the hero of their own story. They have their own justifications for why they're doing what they're doing, and they think they're the good guys, which is something I got to play with. Like I said, I write an ensemble, so I have an antagonist. I write from his point of view, and his point of view is that the elite are the people who matter, and if you're not one of the elite, you just don't matter. And sometimes it's fun to break things just for the fun of it, and I'll leave that there.
Yeah, some people just want to watch the world burn.
As long as they're in a fireproof house.
Right. Well, well, we can definitely put that toward a lot of things in society today, but I'm not gonna comment further on that.
Right. And I wouldn't want anybody to think just because I wrote this character and he does actually have a few victories that I think that way. No, that's
right.
He thinks that way.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
You even look at, say, Palpatine, Vader, every Sith Lord in the Star Wars universe, they all have a reason. And like you said, they're the hero of their story.
Yes.
And they see everyone else as being misguided. Look, all the horrible things Palpatine did, he even tells Luke flat out, you're going to pay for your lack of vision. You can't see my point of view. Henceforth, you are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And how often even those of us that are the most well-intentioned, we treat someone in a particular way because they can't make themselves see our points. I know I've been guilty of it. Sad enough to say. I've had quite a few instances where I have been, but I've also had instances where I knew in my heart of hearts that I was right. And that I think that comes in with the balance that we as human beings innately try to find. Found that common ground amongst ourselves to be able to see the other point of view versus standing strong with what we believe in. Problem is that most people in today's day and age have echo chambers where everyone agrees with them. So there's no desire for balance.
Can I take a moment and tell a quick story?
Please.
It goes back to my stand-up days, and it goes to what Brian is saying, and you can't know. You physically cannot know what is going on in your readers' minds. You can guess. There are some things that you go, oh, this is going to tick somebody off, or this might trigger somebody. That's fine. But there are also things you don't know. When I was doing stand-up, Sam Kinison came to town, and if anybody knows Sam, he's a wild man and a crazy person, and the audiences that come to see Sam expect that. Well, Sam's opening act was a cat named Carl LeBove. Carl's a perfectly nice guy, not the world's greatest comic, but he toured with Sam, so he knows what the limits are, what the audience will accept and what they weren't. And the only time I saw either Sam or Carl offend an audience member was the least offensive joke in Carl's act, where he was talking about being trapped in a car with a bee. And he was, overreacting and being silly, and the audience was digging it. And this woman in the audience lost her crap and said, "That's not funny. My brother died from a bee sting."
Oh, wow.
And the room just like,
What are
right? Well, how in the name of everything that's holy would you know that? And based on a 1% chance that somebody went into anaphylactic shock, I'm going to change my entire act, or I'm going to change the line in my story, or I'm going to change what that character says, because you never know what's going
Right.
to land with somebody in a way that you don't expect it to.
So her brother was Thomas J. Sennett?
I got nothing.
I don't know what that means. Yeah.
You never seen My Girl?
Oh,
You know what's
I didn't.
terrifying?
Forever
Is
ago. I don't
understand
remember his name.
90% of what Brian says. I didn't think I was that big of a geek, and I'm wrong.
Just when you think you got me figured out, I throw a curveball.
Well,
Well,
good.
I think for something like that though, that's one of those levels of I don't even want to go so far as to call that offensive. That's almost like accidentally. I mean, I hate using the term triggered loosely, but that's almost like an accidental trigger for the time where, who's going to know that other, now it's different if he would have come out and looked right at, say, me and just said, "Hey, N-word, what?
Yeah.
You're offended? Why?" But I think that was a cool story because it also sort of piggybacks based on anything that we write, anything that we do, anything that we say in aspects of panels like this. People say, "Well, you highly offended me." All right, but is that more my fault for speaking, or maybe, just maybe, can you understand that you are a stranger to me? I do not know you. I do not know your story. So how can you fault me if I said something that upset you if I don't even know you? Like I walk on two sides of this when the argument of the oversensitivity of our society today. And the reason why I'm of two minds of it is because I definitely want to say people are way too easily offended. They need to grow thicker skin. I do want to say that on one hand. But on the other hand, I think that when we say something like that blindly, I think that we kind of dismiss the other person's experiences that brought about the reaction. Now, I'm not saying that their reaction is their feelings aren't wrong. It's the reaction that needs work. Just like with what the story that Wayne just shared. There's no way that man could have known that her brother died of a bee sting. I think that bit would have been hilarious because guess what? I've been trapped in a car, a bee got stuck in my shoe, and I got stung. And it was funny as hell after the fact, and those are some of the best stories to tell. So sucks that her brother died of a bee sting. I'm sure that was very traumatic and hurtful for her, but that doesn't mean that we can't enjoy the comedy because
it's odd that she spoke out so vehemently, instead of holding it in and walking out. It's
Mhm.
kind of it's the reaction that is kind of stunning to me a little bit. But
Yeah, and I think that
Maybe it
we
just happened.
Yeah.
maybe,
yeah,
but I
Recent
think
grief.
yeah, because the thing is, we all grieve in different ways, and a lot of times
sure.
when we grieve, we lash out at anything
Right.
we see as.
And
But
it's like you said, we don't know what their mindset was and what they're thinking about, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, I think part of the problem we have as a society right now is that there was a time where we, as those that either command an audience, writers, filmmakers, musicians, public speakers, whatever, we could say what we wanted and you just had to take it because we're talking. Morton Downey Jr., for those of us that are old enough to remember Morton Downey Jr., could say what he wanted to say because that was his platform. Things could happen on Jerry Springer because that was his platform. Now the sort of the power dynamic has sort of shifted because now the audience can say, well, I don't like this. And now the audience is practicing the whole, well, because I don't like it, it shouldn't exist. Because I don't like it, you have to change for my sensibilities. It's like, well, no, because look, just because you don't like Dave Chappelle, because you don't like Sam Kinison, you don't like early Eddie Murphy, doesn't mean that I can't. So why does something that you don't like got to disappear if 1,000 other people enjoy it? That's where I'm talking about. We got to have this balance.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't want balance because they have their echo chambers. And while people's feelings are valid, they seem to think that the validity of their feelings equals absolute power and sovereignty. And that's not what you get when you're in a society.
Right. It seems to me like we used to have a system where if like a television show or a book had content that you didn't like, you just didn't consume it. You didn't watch it. You turned the channel.
Yep.
And that's exactly the way I think it should be. But now they're like, no, we're going to mandate that you can't do that. We're going to ban this book. We're going to cancel this show. And it's
And the
just,
ironic thing is, we had 5 channels back then, and now we have 50, 500, right? And
Yeah.
so much
YouTube
more
is a million channels. I mean, yeah.
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 All right.
So,
So
like anything on, you
Okay,
just went
there's a
outside.
three-tier conversation to be had about the fact that every problem in this country is due to cable television. Because back in the day, we had 4 channels. If you consumed news, you got it from certain sources. And whether it was biased or this or that, or whether you believed it or you didn't, everybody shared the same basic information. We translated it however we translated, but everybody was working from the same set of facts. Now you can go way down the rabbit hole and never watch the same show, read the same book, see the same movie as the person sitting next to you, and then how do you have a conversation?
Well,
Yeah.
we'll talk about how we deal with that in our own imaginations and what we do here in a second. But let's bring some balance
Well,
back
I
to the
think
fore.
Sarah wants to jump in on something.
Oh, let's go ahead, Sarah.
I do, yeah. Just kind of my thoughts on all of this is like, I think a lot of this, like so many things that we blame on social media, this is definitely one of them where people have that like direct interaction with art and artists and studios, and they can make noise, and like people take that seriously. So I think that definitely caused part of it. For me, like on the one hand, yes, I do agree. People have gotten too sensitive, maybe. But again, we don't know what they're going through. I think the bigger thing is like when this whole thing sort of started, it was the first time maybe some artists had to maybe justify why they were doing some of the things that they did. And it's possible they couldn't come up with a good reason. And that like scared them and they lashed out at, you're being too sensitive and I don't need to explain myself to you, which maybe you don't. But I think it also brings about, at least for me and things I see, a time of, okay, if I'm going to be offensive, I'm going to be intentional about it. So when I get hate for it, or usually when, but if I get hate for it, I'm going to be able to say, this is why I did it. And if you have a reason for why you did it, I think that it's justified. And people can be offended by it, but at least there's a reason you're doing it, as opposed to just kind of going up on stage or whatever and just spewing out whatever thing comes into your head with absolutely no regard for how it's being received. When you're in entertainment, the reception is kind of a big part of it. So you should be thinking about how people are going to react to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So let's bring some balance back to the force and have CL Cannon jump in here and give us some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Lords of the Wild. And then we'll be back and wrap everything up and have a little fun.
Hey guys, CL Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. And today I want to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Lore of the Wilds by Annalee Sabrana. The first book I have for you is called Nymph Totem by Brittany Chanel. They should have known when they damned me. Hell makes monsters of us all. Nova has lived all her life in the garden, an island that floats above Earth undetected. Her secret friendship with the prince changed to something more, and all that stands in the way of the life she's been dreaming of is her totem ceremony, an age-old rite that assigns one of 4 elements she'll spend her life protecting. When Nova's ceremony goes horribly wrong, she's placed in a 5th totem, located in the underworld. Humiliated and cast out, her only hope is to convince her true love's arrogant, moody brother that there's been some kind of terrible mistake. But the longer she spends in the darkness battling the salacious urges brought up by the underworld's ruler, the closer she comes to unleashing her true nature and making the world that betrayed her burn. The second book I have for you is called A Dance of Blood and Destiny by K.R.S. McIntyre. Can an exiled princess save a broken kingdom? The Olani King are attacked. If murderous bandits don't destroy the peaceful and prosperous Fae community, then kingdom politics and family drama will. 18-year-old Princess Kaya is done bending to the will of her overbearing mother, who thinks an arranged marriage with a powerful elven prince can save the kingdom from being ransacked by assassins, bandits, and rogues. She's done hiding her forbidden romance with her vampire boyfriend. If Kaya's father was still around, she'd suspect he'd grant her the freedom to choose her own path in life and love. But he's been missing for years and presumed dead. While estranged from the royal family, Kaya learns that information about her father's disappearance might be found on the island of Elderton, where the deadly Eldritch trials take place. Now Kaya must enter the trials and learn the truth about her father, Queen, and save to stand against it. The third book I have for you is called A Cure for Magic by Talia Greer. Her magic is her power and her curse. Can she master it before it consumes her? When rebels attack the royal compound, Marika learns the true price of her family's legacy. The same deadly magic her ancestors outlawed now runs in her veins, and her royal blood paints a target on her back. Desperate to learn her powers before they destroy her, she takes shelter at Nella University, hiding her true identity. But it's not quite the sanctuary she's hoping for. Argent, the roommate she's paired with, is a prickly woman who seems to despise her. The same rebels who want her family dead flourish here under the guise of a student society, and their most popular member, Harland, seems a little too interested in her dangerous power, and Marika herself. When a spark ignites between all 3 of them, it complicates Marika's quest for control. To stay is to spit upon her family's memory. To leave is to forfeit her one chance to corral the unruly magic. And to do nothing is to risk being consumed by the very forces she seeks to understand. And the last book I have for you is called Entangled by Sulla Sullivan. Heavy is the head that grows the crown. Princess Ciara never wanted to be a princess, and now she wants to be queen even less. For the last 5 years, Ciara's life has been a careful, scripted tale of duty and destiny, but she's always felt like the forgotten character in her own story. Banished to her tower by her power-hungry stepfather, she's resigned to her role as a figurehead. Cryptic prophecies woven into her hair by the wise women serve as Ciara's only connection to the outside world. When the ruling council decides her stepfather must step down as regent and pave the way for Ciara, a plan is devised that shall be coronated in name only. For the plan to succeed, everything must go off without a hitch. Enters Sir Gavin, a valiant knight whose unwavering loyalty to the crown is matched only by his relentless pursuit of perfection. Just when he thinks his shining military career is over, he's summoned to the capital and given one final order. His mission? To guard and tutor a spoiled princess until her symbolic coronation. Once that's over, he can finally retire. Gavin envisions a peaceful retirement by the seaside once his ridiculous task is complete. Ciara, on the other hand, sees the impending coronation as the only true way to fulfill her duty to her kingdom. Fate, it seems, has a different plan when Ciara and Gavin find themselves thrown into a reluctant partnership as they prepare for the event. 2 weeks, 2 separate goals, and 2 people from entirely different worlds. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye.
And as always, thank you to CL Cannon for that wonderful, wonderful Indie Connection. Everybody go check those books out. And just do that, please. All right. So we have a bunch of chat here. A.O. Mango says people are overly sensitive these days when it comes to art. Whatever we create will likely offend someone somewhere. We must create with our stories in mind and realize that not everyone will like what we do and work hard, very hard on. However, we must stay the course and cherish those who connect with what we do create. And then he was agreeing with Brian and Dennis there, and then he agreed with Wayne. Cable has polarized the news for sure. All right. That brings me kind of into the last adventure I would love to take with you all today in regards of imagination and writing, not who we are, but what we write. And that is, I am curious from a creation standpoint, when you do come up with these ideas, when these ideas do flourish, however they flourish, and we're not going to get into that stupid question. Where do your ideas come from? No, just it comes from somewhere. Whatever. We pick them from a hat. However we want to answer that dumb question. But I am curious though, when they do stimulate you, when they bring you to a point when you kind of gone, okay, now I have a story or this. Are you more likely to explore that further and kind of go with it, or are you kind of taking it back and kind of examining what you just created and kind of adding your own personal touches to it? Do you find what I'm saying? What I'm asking is, do you find that your personal touches, no matter what, kind of lend itself to a little bit of what you're trying to create, or is it more about the voice that you have that you're trying to add in there?
Bro, at this point, I'm just trying to get something written. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm just trying to write something.
That's a whole other show. Bro.
I know, but I think I'm trying to refine my voice when it comes to writing. Because before I took a sabbatical going for my MBA, I knew what my voice was, and I knew what I wanted to say. And then I took that time away. And when you don't do something for a time, you lose it. Writing is like any skill. If you don't do it enough, you lose it. And so I think for me in my process now, I've got this story idea. And instead of pantsing like I used to, I've been plotting. I've been mind mapping. I've been brainstorming. And I did it for 2 weeks. There would be a time where I'd be sitting in front of the computer and just staring, deleting and adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing and all that other stuff, and then now it's trying to use my voice to get those ideas to become a story. So, I think a lot of it is, if you're going to find your voice with this, you can put your own personal spin on it, or just let the imagination run its course, but it's still finding that voice above all else.
I'm just trying to write stories that people enjoy. Um, for me, I've got this automated universe concept, the automated empire. I've got a 4,000 year timeline, and I'm just exploring little chunks of it along the way. So the goal is to write a series of trilogies. So you can pick up any trilogy and just read that one and get a good story. And then if you pick up another one, you know it's in the same universe. You can feel the connection, but you don't have to read one before the other to get a good story. Um, Currently, my work in progress is the humanity's first contact, and it does not go well. Um, I call it my steampunk dinosaur story, though, so it's fun.
So I'm currently, my work in progress is the fourth book in the Misadventure series. And it's going to be one that sort of effectively ends the series for at least for now, possibly forever. So it's kind of a fraught moment because there is so much of me in the book. Like I'm trying to sort of create the book and also say goodbye in a way to characters I really love. So that is challenging. And I do find probably more of myself and the emotions I'm feeling bleeding into the story a little bit, which I think is appropriate. But yeah, I mean, it's different for every project, right? So that's where I'm at right now.
You know what's funny is I'm having two thoughts while I'm doing this. Listening to Sarah, I get it. Like when I finished Johnny Lycan, I was so relieved. I feel so free right now. I am committing complete career suicide by going back to writing one-off books, like that aren't part of a series and all the stuff that we've been told. But your voice is so much easier when it's not constrained and having to stay in that lane longer than you want it to. You know, my literary ADD says, I'm going to tell this story and then I'm going to tell this other cool story over here. Right. And the fact that I'm writing this very weird, complex, super darker than anything I've written before historical fiction, I get to pour everything in there and then I'll go find some other cool story to tell. Right. So I'm actually feeling really good about it right now in terms of my voice. The other thing, though, to tag on to what Brian said, I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume for a moment that your voice is harder to find because it's not the same voice as it was before you took a break and got an MBA and did all of this stuff, right? You are a literally different person than you were then. So of course your voice is going to be different.
Yeah, it is. And it's wild because I spent a lot of time editing 3 different works in progress that I was working on before I took my break. And I literally just spent time trying to bring some balance to the force and rewriting certain things. And then it's just like, all right, I'm done. I have nothing else.
You can't go home again, Tom Wolfe.
No.
Yeah, I had the same issue rewriting. So my first book was a standalone, and it was intended to be a standalone. And then people were just driving me crazy about, hey, when are you going to write another one? We'd love to see these characters in another book. And so I ended up writing another book because I got commissioned by a small publisher to do so. And I was like, okay, well, if you're gonna pay me, I guess I'll write another book. And so I wrote another book. And it connects loosely to the first one. But then, of course, my imagination goes wild and goes, well, you know what? I have a third book in me for this series. So now I'm going to write the third book. So I start the third book and I realize that the first book is not connected to the third book at all. Right. And the second book then becomes moot. It becomes Weekend at Bernie's 2, basically.
At least that's a good mercenary reason to write a second book. The book that you've got beside my face here, Actor's Orphan, was written because Acra's Bastard was a standalone, and I had this lovely epilogue at the end about what happened to Luca as an old man. And my daughter said she hated the epilogue, and if I put that in there and didn't write another book, she would leave me in a home and never visit.
Damn, dude, kids are brutal, man.
Yeah,
that's why
that's a dedicated fan for you.
Oh yeah,
That's why
Sharon
there's
is.
a second Luca book, is all I'm saying.
What I was saying is writing the first book. So I go back and so I decide I'm going to add a couple extra chapters to the first book and make like a special edition of the first book. Huge mistake, because I wrote that first book in 2008, 2009. And I'm looking at it in 2022, 2023, going, okay, yeah, I'm going to just add a couple chapters and I'll be fine. I'm 10 years older. I've been through a lot more in my life. And I found that as soon as I started playing with where to put these chapters, I was rewriting the stuff that was in front of them and rewriting the stuff that was met. And all of a sudden I'm rewriting the entire first book. Right. And that's a nightmare in itself. You never want to do that. So
I think what's funny, Invincible Heart, before I pitched Kendra the idea of allowing me to spin off of the Permutation Archives, I had the first 3 chapters of it written, but I didn't know what to do with it. And it was actually titled on my computer, "What the F Are You?" Because I had no clue. But then I read the first book in the series, The Harvested, and I'm like, and ideas just started turning. And this was after I had, The Enforcer had been out for a little bit. And the first edition of The Enforcer, you can't find it anymore. And there's a reason why for that. It's just awful. And it's like a hand-drawn cover from a buddy of mine. And it was really cool at the time. But I didn't think that I'd be able to write anything else. And then I wrote Invincible Heart, and then I wrote The Hunted. And then I got then Unbreakable Mind came about after. So, those just sort of came out. But it's kind of funny, you're talking about, the origins of different writings, that was Invincible Heart.
Yeah.
And I even have a third book in that series that I haven't even looked at. I have not looked at it in years, because it's like there's definitely no way that I can do anything with that as of yet. I'm going to have to scrap all of it and do something completely different.
All right. Do we feel like we've tackled our imaginations enough here? Anybody want to add anything before I torture you all? All right. All right. So here we go. We're going to play the epilogue game. It's a trivia game. I've got 5 questions here. They're all multiple choice, so don't worry about it. And then I'm going to keep track. And the winner gets the illustrious prize, because I know some of you are not super familiar with my channel. I will say that you get to say the magic words at the end, which is "It's always time to go indie now." So whoever wins gets to do that. Yay, right? All right. What a wonderful prize. Just so glorious, right? It's the greatest prize ever, right? For questions that you have no idea about, or probably no idea about even when I tell you what they are. All right. So because I am at Slamdance, I thought it would be fun to kind of play off of that theme here a little bit. So I wanted to ask these questions, and the first question I have for everybody is, who is credited with as the first band to encourage the audience to actually slam dance? Is it A, Anthrax, B, Bad Brains, C, Ozzy Osbourne, or D, Cyndi Lauper? I'm just going to go down the line. So Wayne's A, B, C, or D. Do you want me to read them again, everybody?
Bad Brains.
Okay, so B.
Yep.
Okay, Brian?
Bad Brains.
So B, okay.
One of my favorite bands, by the way.
Sarah?
I have absolutely no idea, so I'll go with the crowd and go B.
Okay. And Dennis?
I'm going to go with Cyndi Lauper just because.
That's true.
Well, everybody but Dennis got it right.
Girls
All right.
just wanted to have fun, not slam dance, Dennis.
What band was the first to put the actual title Slam Dance in a song? Was it SOD? Excuse me, A, DJ Quicksilver, B, SOD, C, Prince, or D, Metal Church? Brian, we'll start with you.
Metal Church.
Okay, so D. All right. Sarah?
I wasn't listening, so I'm just gonna go A. I don't know these answers.
All right.
I was actually looking for a dice to just roll.
So thank you for taking this so seriously. I appreciate that.
Did we lose him?
Lose me?
Huh?
No, I'm good. Did you not hear the
I think
question?
it's your turn, Dennis.
Nope. You
Okay,
froze
so-
up for a moment, Joe. Because I haven't voted yet. I know that.
Yeah. It's your turn.
It's your turn to
Okay.
vote.
I'm originally from Minnesota, so I'm voting for Prince.
Okay. So
Take
see,
that.
we've got everybody. Okay, Wayne.
I actually have not heard of two of those bands, so I'm going to go out on a limb and hang with Brian and say Metal Church.
Okay, it is actually Sarah. Sarah fucking around got it right. It is DJ Quicksilver who actually wrote
Well,
the first time.
And we found out.
Yeah, it was actually.
Don't all laugh
it was-
at me.
It was an actual movie called Slam Dance in 1987 that he wrote a song called Slam Dance. So, I mean, it wasn't intended to be Slam Dance, but that's the very first origin of that song having the title of it. All right. So, what was the first ever film at the Slamdance Film Festival? Was it A, Bottle Rocket, B, Swingers, C, The Day Trippers, or D, Heart of Gold? I'm going to start with you, Sarah.
I've Swingers because it's the only one I've ever heard of.
Okay. Dennis?
4.
It works for me, so why not?
Well, it's
A, B, C, or
it's
D.
either
Dennis.
Swingers or
D for Dennis.
Okay. Wayne?
it's either Swingers or Bottle Rocket. I'm going to say Swingers.
Okay. Brian?
I'm gonna say Swingers just because it feels like a
You
fun
know
name.
your movie cred is on the line here, Brian. So.
Yeah, no. I know.
And you guys are all wrong.
Well,
it is C, The Day Trippers. That's the first movie.
my entire identity is now a lie.
Now, I will say, in fairness, Bottle Rocket and Swingers came out in the same year, and they were both part of the Sundance Film Festival, not the Slamdance Film Festival. So.
Well, there you go.
Oh, well, that makes all the difference.
Right?
That's
It
what I was
does.
thinking.
It does.
Yeah.
Trust me, it does. Being on this side of the fence, it does. Trust me. What innovation is Slamdance famous for? Is it A, the first festival to include TV pilots? B, the highest elevation to ever see a movie at? C, Truth, Justice, and the American Way? And if any of you pick that, I'm going to fucking drop the stream right now. And D, first to see a film digitally. We'll start with you, Dennis. Which one is it? Does it include TV pilots, highest elevation, Truth, Justice, and the American Way, or the first to screen a film digitally?
Although my Navy experience makes me want to pick Truth, Justice, and the American Way, I'm going to go with the highest elevation.
Okay. It's not a bad pick. All right, Wayne?
I'm going to say that it includes TV pilots.
Okay. Brian?
You know, I'm also gonna go with the TV pilots because that just feels correct to me.
All right. And Sarah?
As much as I really want to call your bluff with C, I mean, you just can't say things like that to me. And that's I don't want to ruin the stream for everybody. I'm gonna go with The digital. Yeah.
And as much as you want to not take this seriously, Sarah, you're kicking everybody's ass right now because that is the correct answer. It was the first film festival to ever screen a film digitally.
I should have said digital.
So close.
It was kind of there. It was at the tip of my tongue.
All right. So the last question I have for you is, what director just won last night the Independent Spirit Award, who has had 2 of his films premiere at Slamdance? Is it A, Steven Soderbergh, B, Sean Baker, C, John Mulaney, or D, Ken Burns? For you, Wayne.
Sean Baker.
Brian?
Sean Baker.
Sarah? Don't be looking it up, Sarah.
I'm not. I'm looking off into nowhere. Soderbergh.
Okay. Dennis?
I'm going to go with Truth, Justice, and the American Way.
So it's the last question, so I'm not going to end the stream. It is B, Sean Baker. Sean Baker won the award. For a bonus point, Brian or Wayne, can either of you tell me the movie in which he just won the award for?
Honora.
There you go. Wayne gets an extra point. That's not going to matter because Sarah wins the game.
Wow.
And I was going to make her the winner anyway because she didn't take this fucking seriously. So
I take everything seriously.
But yes, Sarah did actually answer the most correct questions. All right. Enough of that tomfoolery. Let's have everybody tell everybody where they can find themselves. And so, Dennis, why don't you start us off? Tell everybody where they can find you, my friend.
Yeah, automatedempire.com. I have the links to all my socials there. I'm currently working on a new book, which is going to be the first of a trilogy of books of First Contacts. And also, as an aside, I'm designing T-shirts and whatnot at shop.automatedempire.com. Take a look if you want. Nice. And thank you.
Yeah. Are the book covers going to be T-shirts?
Yes.
Cool.
Well, most
you got some. I don't know if you've all seen some amazing kick-ass book covers, but Dennis has some amazing kick-ass book covers. So
yeah, the shop, the website has an author or a novel tie-in section that has all sorts of stuff with the art. Yes.
Nice. All right. Awesome, Mr. Brian Tan.
Yep, you can find me on Blue Sky and Fanbase at author Brian Tan. Yep, so that's where you find me. That's where I'll be at.
And you'll be and you will find him this Tuesday on Go Indie Now as we have our second Saving You a Seat episode airing on Tuesday. So
Yep. Once a month.
Awesome. All right, Mr. Wayne Termel, where can everybody find you, sir?
That's me. You can find me at WayneTermel.com. I'm spending a lot more time on Blue Sky right now, so it's just author Wayne Termel. And you can find my nonfiction, my urban fantasy, my everything at the moment on my Amazon author page.
Awesome. And I am Joe Compton, and this is Go Indie Now. Congratulations, you found us. If you have for the first time, please do like, subscribe, and comment. We really appreciate it. If not even for the first time, if you're here, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us get seen and gets conversations like this out there, which I think are very important. It's a wonderful, wonderful conversation that we just had, and really appreciative of our panel and all the ways they took everything so seriously, including the epilogue. Mm-hmm. And that leads me to leave it in the hands of the one and only SG Tosh. And SG, tell everybody where they can find you first, and then you can say the magic words to take us out, please.
All right. You can find me at sgtosh.com is the safest way to find me since social media and sales pages are kind of in flux right now. Currently, I'm most active on Instagram. Currently, my books are still available on Amazon and in Kindle Unlimited. Thank you very much to Joe for having me. You can also see me when we do Hit the Dice here on Go Indie Now. I'm often a guest. So yeah, thank you for a great conversation. And remember, it is always time to go indie now.